We'd like to thank you for contributing to our Pass the Hat Fund. Due to your generosity, we're able to continue our virtual readings beyond the end of May. And also our Murphy Write-ins will continue on Mondays and Wednesdays through the end of May. We'll keep posting daily writing prompts, and we're doing this because of your generosity. So thank you so much for doing this, for helping us out. And if you missed our previous virtual readings or would like to re-experience them, go to the Murphy Writing YouTube page. Stephanie will post that link on the side there, so you can, in the chat box. You can go and you can see this reading again, hear this reading again next week, and you can go back and look at some of the previous readings. And more good news, we just opened up second sections of our online writing programs that filled up within a few days. Stephanie will be leading a workshop on form and freedom, poetry workshop, and I'll be leading one on memoir. So again, go to murphywriting.com, and if they interest you, register and do some writing with us. And let me tell you how this works. We're going to begin with Lois will read, then Mimi, then Paul-Victor, and they will be able to, they can't hear you, but if you'd like to show your appreciation, at the very bottom of the Zoom screen, there's an emotion box. So if you, a reaction box, if you click that, you can either shake your hand, that's I clap, or do a thumbs up, and that way they'll be able to see that. So that's how we'd like you to express your, whatever you feel like that. Or you can also do it the old-fashioned way. All right, so let's get started. We will hear from, in this order, Lois Marie Harrod, Mimi Schwartz, and Paul-Victor Winters.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad you're all here. A special thank you to Peter and Stephanie Colley and Taylor Coyle for doing all they needed to do to make this possible. And thank you all for coming. I've been thinking about all of us sitting at home, and if we've been lucky, we've had a cat in our lap or a dog in our lap or perhaps a kid or a partner there. And I've been thinking of my mother and her cat, George. The poem is called For I Will Consider My Mother's Cat, George. And of course, it's a tribute to Christopher Smart's poem, For I Will Consider My Cat, Jeffrey, who was a sleek fellow. My mother's cat, George, was not. For I will consider my mother's cat, George, one-eyed, one-eared, and after that accident, crooked-jawed, mangle-pawed, limping. George, bad cat, mad cat, dirty yellow tiger cat, ditch and alley, down in the mouth, in and out cat, scrapper, rapper, smelling of fish, long-haired mat cat, the rad cat of cartoons, sneaking after those churchified mousies, waving their sanctified hankies at the moon. Oh, how my mother, who barely tolerated kittens in or out her house, in or out the shed, loved him. All her tight-lipped anger made flesh. Oh, how quick she ran when my sister's boyfriend, Jerry, showed up, saying he thought he saw George limping into the field, probably hit by a car. She knew, we all knew it was Jerry's car, but she did not accuse him, no. She ran out that raw and rainy night and found him, her cat, gurgling in the weeds, dying. Took him to the vet's anyway, and thereby saved the 7th of his 9 contentious lives. Somehow the vet wired his jaw together, and for 2 months, my mother fed George milk with an eyedropper, and he recovered. How could he not? Looking more rakish than ever. I think of my mother sometimes, sitting silent and smiling as the preacher's wife she was, and on her lap, old George, her one-eyed, one-eared darling, snuffling and snarling. Well, of course, we've all been social distancing, and so has the universe. We have some cosmic distancing going on, as you probably know. All the galaxies are flying farther and farther apart, And we don't understand how fast. According to Scientific American, astronomers have repeatedly calculated the rate of the universe's expansion, the Hubble Constant, with 2 different techniques, and these measurements have produced a seemingly intractable conflict. Cosmic distancing. The stars, too, are moving apart, though cosmologists have not determined the quick. It's one speed when they measure back to the start, another when they predict the end. Or if not the end, the time all moves so distant the cosmos appears empty. You know what I mean. The Hubble constant, inconstant, and already deceiving. You in such a far corner of our little house, I no longer hear you. It's not deafness. It's not cheating. It's the cosmic virus spreading our galaxies. How soon? How fast? Please don't leave this room. My husband and I walk our 4 miles in Hopewell every day. And one of the things we've been delighted with during the COVID crisis is the birds. They are so loud and so happy, and the air is so clean. It makes us realize that if we would give up our getting and spending, the earth would probably heal itself quite well. This is a poem for the feral parakeets of Tokyo, which screech and swoop and sneer in a very squawky manner. And it is these parakeets that are the speakers of the poem. They're very much like the ones in Barcelona, if you've ever been there and heard them. The feral parakeets of Tokyo. This is a sound poem. At dim screech, the dawnfest flight, no sweep since Sunday. We lark in the whim send and swoop a sneer from the massacre fleet. Flinches above me, below. So Flim has it in for sight see. Oh flam flam, oh acclamation. The huge cherry tree a squawky abomination. But it's what we feed on. Blossoms undone by rosy beets. We flit our flowery sit, and breeze petals feathers flow. Snow, snow, how green we come, how green we go. The next 2 poems are from my new chapbook, Woman, which was just published by Blue Lyra Press. And all the poems in the book are about women's bodies. The first one is Large Reclining Nude, and it's an ekphrastic poem after Matisse's Pink Nude. It's one of my husband's favorites, and it's the nude that's speaking. Large Reclining Nude. I said to him, why did you make me so big? Why did you make the white bedspread look like a black and white tiled floor? Do you want people to think I let you take me in the kitchen? You know there is no way I could fit between the refrigerator and the sink. There just isn't enough room there to jam me, the size of that body. And he said, sometimes you seem that big to me. And the second poem from Woman is about Marlene May, who is an alter ego, someone who does all the things I'm too inhibited to do. In this poem, she's in a mortuary painting her mother's nails. Marlene May paints her mother's nails. Went to the mortuary the day before the viewing, just me and my emery boards in that cool room, and Mama covered with a sheet. Mortician said the manicurist would do it, but I remembered Aunt Lavinia, pearl polish smeared on her cuticles. Said the feet were going to be covered up by the satin quilt, but Mama believed you can tell a lady by her feet. I painted her toes summer indigo and glued on rhinestones. Stars, Mama, you can walk on stars forever. Then the hands, her little hands. I wish I could have done the mouth, then it wouldn't have looked so strange. And the last two poems are recently published. The first one is Once in Baltic, Ohio. Baltic, Ohio is a village in central Ohio in Amish country where my mother grew up. And it's where our family went for vacations every summer because my mother and my grandmother made all the clothes we needed for school the next year, myself and my two sisters. Once in Baltic, Ohio. I was a shallow girl in the flooding dusk, unaware of the depth of things. My grandmother floating beside me on the high porch, the swing chains shiny and creaking, and I heard the mockingbirds' gutturals in the husky pear, without understanding how a bird might claim his own solitude in the vowels of another. And then it happened. Night with all its pins began pricking the dusk as my mother had pricked my belly as she adjusted the waist of the new dress she was making for me. Every star needled its individual jeer, and the moon poked its curved thorn until the little pond became so still, I knew I could climb onto the porch railing and spiral down into its darkness, its body becoming my body, and never touch bottom. And the last poem is an ekphrastic poem entitled Ascophyllum nodosum, or knotted kelp. This is a photograph by Tasha O'Neill, and it's a photograph of kelp, that's seaweed, the long strands that also have little bladders that hold air and keep it floating in the water when it is submerged. And of course, it falls to earth when the tide goes out. Ascophyllum nodosum, knotted kelp, Acadia National Park, Maine. At low tide we lie tangled, a jangled heap thrown on stone. But when the tide glides in, our bead-like bladders, those little knots of air, lilt us up like ballerinas, and we drown. Twice daily, dried and drenched. Why do we worry so? Even as we die, we dance. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Thank you all for being here. And thank you, Peter and Stephanie and Taylor, for making this all possible. I think putting us all in a living room together at a time when I think we really need to see and feel and hear each other. So thanks. I'm going to read two pieces. They're both from my last book, When History is Personal. And these are two pieces that happened a while ago, but they seem to resonate right now one having to do with some issues of learning to be alone, which is something that we're all dealing with, sheltering in place, and the other with what does it take to survive the spirit of the hard times. So first one is called Fix It Fantasy, and I'll read it now. When you're married for 50 years to a man who fancies himself as Mr. Fix-It, I say fancies because of a varying success rate, you don't learn how to hang pictures, unclog dehumidifiers, or replace toilet seats. So when after a weekend of guests, including 2 toddlers who are Uber bathroom goers, you discover that your toilet seats now roll like a ship on the high seas, you need to do something. It happened 6 months after my husband Stu died. I remembered that his toolbox was in the basement and went downstairs, but as soon as I saw it sitting there, I knew it was a Pandora's box, able to release a grief that I could not easily put back. Like the day I moved Stu's bike back into the back of the garage, or realized that his Cheerios were now stale. Small moments, so unpredictable, not like Thanksgiving or death certificates for which I was ready. I phoned my friend's handyman, but he was on a hunting trip, and Stu's colleague who had been helping me with house problems was in London until next week, so what else to do? I typed how to fix a toilet seat, YouTube, into Google, and a calm and sturdy man with a mustache appeared on screen. He showed me how to lift the fasteners, remove the toilet seat, unscrew the bolts, 1, 2, 3. I can do this, I said aloud to the TV. Just because I haven't doesn't mean I can't. The man, so technologically soothing, put the toilet seat in place, screwed in the new bolts, and snapped the fasteners. Done. I headed to the building supply store with my 2 toilet seats to be sure I got the right ones, and a curly-haired salesman my son's age reaffirmed my conquering abilities. I believed him because last month, thanks to a YouTube video, I had put a queen-size duvet cover back onto our bed. When Stu was alive, it was easy to stuff the freshly washed comforter into the cover and spread it across the bed. Stu would take one corner, I would take the other, and we'd shake until every lump fell into place. But on my own, after 30 minutes of sweat and swearing, the comforter and the duvet cover lay on the floor, a tangled mess. That is, until YouTube showed me 4 simple folds. It only takes 1 minute, assured the young woman from Woman's Day, the video's sponsor. Though I needed 10 minutes to tuck the comforter into its rightful place, I felt triumphant. Why not again, I said, and walked into the upstairs bathroom with the toilet seat underarm and the screwdriver in hand. The new bolts lay in wait outside the bathroom door. The toilet seat fit perfectly, and I felt Stu looking down, proud that I was managing on my own. He had worried that last year, giving me passwords, a list of bank accounts. He even tried teaching me Excel, but nothing about removing the toilet seat fasteners before me. I pushed and pulled, they didn't budge. And because they were plastic, I thought they might snap, as had happened to Stu, but he had extras. I did not. This was not like YouTube, I said to myself, crestfallen, and lay down on the duvet cover sideways, connecting what was his side with mine. It was dark when I woke up, debating whether I should try again as I headed for the little bathroom, its one seat still intact. So the other story I'd like to read, called Story on a Winter Beach, actually takes place 2 times in Peter's, when the winter getaway was down in Cape May, and the beach is the beach that we used to all walk on. It's a story. Why I feel it's about today is about survival. How do we get through, especially when we hear so many bad stories all the time on television? How do we keep our spirits up? So this is about our need for the good stories. When I was 47 and diagnosed with breast cancer, I gathered every good luck story I could about my college roommate's mother who had breast cancer 35 years ago, about my colleague who called to say that she'd had a double mastectomy 12 years earlier, about my good friend Sue, who had 3 cancerous lymph nodes and 10 months of chemotherapy and looked terrific 3 years later, better than before. These stories helped me get on with my life. The darker stories of those having problems, of those who didn't make it, felt dangerous, like a jinx. So I stayed away from breast cancer support groups and avoided articles with titles like The Anguish of Breast Cancer. I wanted no anguish, no victimhood, only lucky stories that encouraged me 6 weeks after my mastectomy to say I had breast cancer. 30 years later, I still say I had, but along the way, the further I got from my mastectomy, the more I realized that my old definition of good story, i.e. cancer-free, was too limited. It allowed luck to override the power of spirit, and the stories of spirit, unconcerned with luck, are the really good stories. I realized that on the beach of Cape May, walking in mid-January with the poet Judy Rowe Michaels. It was maybe 2 years after my surgery, and we were both teaching in the Cape May Writers' Getaway, held every year to lift the winter spirits. The crisp and air and frozen sand let us move at a good clip, and I marveled at her energy after a second round of chemotherapy. Yes, it made her sick for a day or 2. Yes, she lost her hair, but I'm fine, she said, and started telling me about the house she'd just bought, her first. It sat on a ridge of New Jersey's Sourland Mountains northwest of me, a renovated hunting cabin with big windows, a wood-burning stove, and, best yet, a hot tub in a garden off the back porch. So much better than the cramped second floor she and her husband had rented in nearby Hopewell for years. She said, it was something I always wanted, but never got around to buying until now. Maybe she'd live in it for a year, maybe 20 years, maybe just a few months. It didn't seem to matter, which is what I loved. She never mentioned luck. She had made her own by buying a mountain house and going daily into its big bedroom study with its big view. And all the anger and fear we feel when we discover we might die went into new poems like No Guarantees, which moved beyond dark feelings into a life she savored, whatever lay ahead. I told Judy's story to another writer friend, Barbara Daniels, after she had chemotherapy. 2 years and Judy's still in the house, I said, as we walked the beach again at Cape May. That was soft this year from the warm winter, our feet sinking with each step. Barbara smiled and I told her that I liked her wig. It gave her a zippy look, a thick blonde Buster Brown cut, much more dramatic than her fine wavy chestnut. We talked about needing good stories to survive, and she said the story she counted on most was her own. She'd repeat it whenever she could. How she fainted in class, how her students called 911, how the ER doctors had seen a shadow that meant more than a bad reaction to antibiotics. And most important, how her skill in storytelling, that she said got better with each retelling, helped to save her. Doctors, nurses, orderlies, nurses' aides all paid closer attention. She'd gotten better care, she was sure, not to mention a sense of control. We talked about the power of the verb had versus has, and how cancer as past tense makes the future more real. She told me about a friend of hers with breast cancer who had just gotten married. She hadn't even waited for the pathology report. Why should she? We both agreed in delight. I told her of my husband Stu's mantra about our double whammy. You have to play the hand that's dealt and play it as well as you can. He'd had a heart attack 4 days after my doctor discovered my lump and had his angioplasty 3 days before my surgery. We were not yet 50, and the thought that we could die so early had never crossed our minds. But there it was, our safe world unhinged. So now what? I embraced Stu's attitude and him and felt less afraid, more hopeful. Which is probably why 10 days after a mastectomy, I decided to hold a Passover Seder. Nothing big, just for Stu, our children, and me. I wasn't religious, didn't even like ritual, but somehow I needed to eat the traditional dishes and sing the half-remembered melodies from Seders of my childhood, always led by my Uncle Julius, always ending with singing about a hapless goat bought and eaten, Hagatya, Hagahatya. I published an essay called A Night for Hiroset about this night of celebration, in which I wanted whoever was up there to be impressed and see us as solid types, not flaky, agreeing that we should be around a lot longer, cancer and heart attack notwithstanding. I acknowledged my why me rage, which intensified each time I had to say thank you, God, again and again it seemed, as others praised freedom and escape from Egypt with my merciful one, he be blessed in heavens and on earth. I sat silent, thinking, what about the Holocaust and my lie? And what about us, me? We're good people. I didn't dwell on the despair of those many nights, looking in the bathroom mirror at a jagged scar. I moved to the pleasures of an evening as sweet as honeyed apples I had chopped despite my stitches, buoyed by a continuity beyond our lives. Passover itself, a bittersweet celebration of survival, made me feel part of a long story that gave me spirit. I wrote, even if a cancer spreads and Stu slumps on the floor tomorrow, we are saying words that we have been handed down for 3,000 years, and they will be repeated next year, no matter what. I held on to that comfort. A year or two later, I received a note about this essay from Judy Rowe Michaels. She'd read it in a magazine, Calyx, and had been comforted by it, so she passed my story on. I sent copies off right away, she said, to 3 women friends, 2 Jewish, 1 not, all of whom have struggled with frightening health crises in their families. One, my office mate, came over to hug me the day she read it and said, you always know what I need. I realized that I'd become as brave as Judy, who bought the mountain house, and Barbara's friend who had gotten married before reading her pathology report. My story had come full circle, a gift with a power to uplift. No matter that I hadn't felt particularly brave that night and fearful on so many others, I had captured a good 3 hours, and it had turned my small steps of risk into full strides of bravery that others joined as we carried each other along, lucky or not. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, Peter and Stephanie and Taylor. This helps. This sort of thing I think is pretty important right now. And I'm excited to read next to Lois. Without discussing age, I have known Lois since I was a teenager. Mimi is one of my college professors. So it's just nice to be able to read next to mentors. That's cool. I am so punk rock that I am going to read 2 drafts. I don't even want to call them poems. They're drafts. They're very new. But I'm going to read them. That's how I roll. April. Apparently it's April, an April in time of mass quarantine. And above us, but below the clouds, is a troop of fat plastic airplanes, Fisher-Price. They look like tubes of cookie dough. They fly V formation like Canada geese, although it's April and these little guys are airplanes all right, full of real fuel and real purpose. Inside, a green plastic peg woman cries, her toy body heaving with clumsy sobs. A plastic peg man in a farmer's hat tries to mollify her fussing, but he has no arms with which to hold her. The planes are carrying packages of other Fisher-Price toys, crates of surgical masks to use against the plague, boxes of lost love letters, and solemn personnel. The man in the farmer's hat says, "Look out there. Look down at all those little rooftops like dropped buttons. Think of it." The woman says, "Those rooftops are just dropped buttons from a who knows why torn shirt. Think of it." And all month long, the planes try to flap their wings, which of course cannot flap. And the plastic airplanes scud across the broken, tainted, heartless sky far above our rooftops. And another new poem, and I'm not joking, this is a poem that came to me in a dream. Well, the kernel of it came to me in a dream. That's the easiest way to write, is to just take a nap. So this is a poem called Dead Lyle. Poor dead Lyle, bogged down in the details. Poor fellow caught the bug. Poor guy cashed in. Poor dead Lyle left holding the bag. The guy wore neckties. What can be said of that? Poor dead Lyle, puttering about in the spirit world, wearing his finest shoes. Looking down on earth, his synthetic angel wings weakly fluttering. Looking down on earth, each suburban house an eyeball. Dead Lyle, burdened and bumbling, shuffling imaginary papers and signing off on phantom documents, doesn't know how to haunt. He misses his tumor. He misses the virus. He misses the suburban houses and the little hand wave of the pastor in the parking lot of the church down the street. Poor dead Lyle. All the little untendered issues, all the paper clips never set loose, all the empty kettles. Never a mouse click again. Never another grab and go salad. Rest, poor dead Lyle, remembered, albeit vaguely. Lois mentioned birds. I'll read a couple of poems that include birds. And yes, this particular time, I get to spend more time out in the yard with birds than usual. Here's a poem called Man Talks to Bird. A bird finds a man, or a man finds a bird. There is a brief, awkward silence. The man says, "Tweet." "Man," says the bird, "the world is full of such prattle." The man looks into his coffee cup, then at his feet, then at the skyline. The bird says, "Man, what makes you make art?" The man drop kicks his car keys and stomps. "For that matter," says the bird, "why the hope for an afterlife? There are so many twigs one could gather, so many worms and bugs." The man makes little sounds with his bubbling lips. "What concerns me, man," says the bird, "is that you fumble about in endless folderol, all of you. This syncopated, abysmal plodding, this lumbering." The man wrinkles his brow, puffs out his cheeks. The bird tries an array of rhetorical flourishes. "The sunset," says the bird, "and the rising of the sun, what the sky does." The man steadies his feet and lopes off, flitting toward an idle horizon. And here's another bird communicating with humans. There's a certain bird, I really have to talk to Barbara Daniels about this. There's a bird in my yard that I swear in the mornings I step out with a cup of coffee and look around, and this bird chirps the word critique, critique, I swear. So every morning I go out and I hear critique, critique. It's a little harsh. Here's a different bird. This is a poem called Here. A certain gray bird circling, taunting frogs. "Wait, wait," she says to a man tossing nuts to ducks in a brackish pond. "Wait, wait," she says. "Wait," she says to the man, now counting his coins. "Wait," to the man, now preparing for bed, and wait, wait, upon his waking. "Wait for pancakes. Wait for the muddied boots to dry. Wait for the stacking of firewood. Wait, wait, says the bird to the man who says nothing. Wait to burn trash in an old steel drum, pockmarked and storied. Wait, says the bird to the man who says nothing on Sunday and again on Monday. Wait, wait on New Year's Day and again in February. There's the man walking his path, a certain gray, pellucid bird darting about in broad sweeps, whistling, trilling like a damaged nerve. And I thought I would try something more lighthearted. Here's a poem called Harriet. A woman is pregnant. Her husband is sure it's a girl. The baby's name will be Harriet. The woman's name is Harriet. Their elder child is named Harriet. The husband dreams of a day when everyone will be named Harriet. His secret girlfriend's name is Harriet. His secret daughter is named Harriet. His favorite barista's name is Harriet, and his bank clerk. He was raised by a Harriet in a neighborhood of Harriets. If the baby is a boy, Harriet. The neighbor's dog is a Jake, but looks like a Harriet. It's pleasant, the man thinks, to look people in their faces and know their names. A crowd of Harriets in the grocery store. A bunch of young Harriets playing ball in a driveway. The man gets a text message from Harriet. Her water has broken. The doctor is a Harriet and all the nurses. The clouds in the gray sky sing the name. Harriet's hair smells like eucalyptus. Harriet's face is inviting and kind, the way the winter solstice is warming and calm. Harriet is in love with Harriet. Harriet the cartographer, Harriet the stand-up comic, Harriet the pharmacist. It's about to rain, but it isn't. There is a Harriet coming. There will be more Harriets. Harriets in every town, every school, every house. Harriets like dreams, like omens, like soft rose-scented certainty. Significance. Everything means something and I am sick of it. Here is a crow that thinks itself a diplomat. Here is a bluebird pining for a mate. Here is a state official driving a state van and wearing a state ID badge on a state lanyard. See her dusty van drift toward the horizon and take flight, her field notes fluttering out of the van windows like babies from a nest, yellow pages on top of white pages. Each object signifies. It's maddening. And I am just fool enough to think I matter in some way. Me, a dim tinkling bell in a discordant cacophony. The weather is stern but grows more resigned, as we should. As we should find a safe tree bough, a small canopy of steadfast branches. The sky signifying, and the hustle up and down the street signifying, as we signify, and as every piece of paper signifies, and as categories squabble with subheadings. This and thus, and the significance waxes like a plastic bag caught in wind. And I'll leave you with a poem called, well, it was published under the title Imagine, but at this point it's called St. Clouds, and it continues to change. St. Clouds is the name of a motel on the main street in the town I grew up in, sort of a sad sack motel. St. Clouds. Imagine being lost at sea, only it's not a sea and you aren't lost, just sort of sad. It's a small town with a hardware store and empanada shop. You're either 14 or 54, but it doesn't matter. The litter in the street gutter is the same. Something's askew in the cosmos. Hint of rain in the air, misaligned heavenly bodies. Imagine the expense of your melancholia automatically deducted from your paycheck. You see, Monday is a perpetual afternoon. February turns into autumn. 1994 becomes 2018, and then it's St. Patrick's Day all over again. and the good cholesterol is taking the bad cholesterol out for drinks. But it's only Thursday, and loan balances drop water balloons from apartment windows next to a hardware store, next to St. Cloud's Motel, where alcoholic grandfathers go to die. Something's askew. Something's always askew. And Friday waits at the pizza shop counter with bad news in his linty pocket. That's all I'm going to read. Thank you so much, and thank you, Peter, and Taylor, and Stephanie, and Lois, and Mimi. Thanks.
Well, thank you. That was terrific. Thank you, Lois Marie Harrod, Mimi Schwartz, and Paul-Victor Winters. And thank all of you for joining us wherever you are in the virtual world. We hope to see you at one of our write-ins this week. We'll be doing it on Monday at 4 p.m., Wednesday at 7 p.m. And again, we hope to see you back here next Friday and hear and listen to Denise Duhamel. So thank you all. Stay safe, social distance. And if you see the Pass the Hat button in the chat room on the way out, and you have a few extra bucks, a few extra shillings, we would appreciate it to keep these things going. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.